American-Israel Public Affairs Committee Policy Conference, meeting in the nation's capital. Live coverage here on C-SPAN 2.
Since the President has already received many standing ovations during the conference, before he even arrived in the building, I have no doubt that your enthusiasm will continue once he is actually here. But there will be one moment this morning when we actually ask, at the request of the Secret Service, that everyone stay in their seats, and that is after the President exits the ballroom. We need to remain in this room for a few moments until the President leaves the building. Thank you in advance for your cooperation. I also want to acknowledge two student government presidents who were inadvertently omitted from last night's roll call at the banquet. Please join me in recognizing Adiola Adejobi and Bakari Sellers. Adiola is from Spelman College, and Bakari is from Morehouse College, and thank you for being here. At the conclusion of the President's address, our conference will also conclude. But then, my friends, our real work begins. Our lobbying appointments today will be among the most important conversations we will have with our elected officials. But our conversations cannot end when our conference does. We must continue to cultivate and build relationships with candidates and members of Congress, helping them understand the many issues shaping the U.S. Israel friendship. You and I need to have conversations with our friends, family, and neighbors who weren't with us at this year's conference. So call them when you get home. Tell them what they missed. Tell them about the real-life heroes whose stories you have heard here. Commander of the Exodus, Yossi Harel, whose place in our people's history is legendary. François Zimmeré and Reich van Dam, who are making pro-Israel history in Europe. The Israeli doctors, agricultural experts, scientists, and aid workers who travel the globe bringing hope and healing to people who have previously had neither. And Ina Zussman, whose journey here to the United States this week exhibits the extraordinary courage and resilience of the country she loves. But not just that. Tell them about the many young professionals who took time away from their jobs and families to be with us. Tell them about the AIPAC veterans, some of whom have made the annual journey back to Washington for 25 or even 30 years. And tell them about the student leaders whose political sophistication and love for the Jewish state defines a new generation of activists. And after you tell them about this year's conference, invite them to make the trip with you to Washington next year to do their part to affect Israel's future. You and I will need their energy and passion as we meet the challenges to come. In this post-9/11 world, it has never been easier to explain to our friends in the pro-Israel community why Israel's and America's security are inextricably intertwined and why their advocacy is needed to secure the future of Israel's children and our own. As we begin new conversations with potential AIPAC members in our community, we also need to look for opportunities to work with minority and religious groups and help them nurture and transform their passion for Israel into political activity. The great Winston Churchill once said, "A pessimist sees a problem in every opportunity, and an optimist sees an opportunity in every problem." To be a member of the AIPAC family means you must seize every opportunity, transforming problems into possibilities. To our more than 4,500 delegates, thank you for all you already do to make AIPAC strong in your hometowns throughout our country and for your continuing optimism. The President will be here momentarily.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome American-Israel Public Affairs Committee President Amy Friedkin. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Ladies and gentlemen, this morning I have the great honor of introducing the President of the United States of America, George Walker Bush. Mr. President, in your home state, I believe there's a saying that Texans are fond of using. You can't just talk the talk. You gotta walk the walk. 4 years ago, then Governor George W. Bush took the stage at AIPAC's policy conference. He spoke of his deep-seated and heartfelt support for the Jewish state, proudly declaring that America and Israel are brothers and sisters in the family of democracy. Years later, Mr. President, you have indeed walked the walk side by side with our friend and ally Israel. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, you have led our own country during one of our nation's most difficult eras. In the wake of September 11th and the days since, you have worked to protect and secure our own homeland against the scourge of terrorism. As we gather here today, Mr. President, our thoughts are with our brave men and women in uniform. We pray that their mission to win the war against terrorism and instill democracy in Iraq and Afghanistan is successful, and they will return safely to their families. Mr. President, you have made it clear that Israel and America are partners in the war against terrorism, allies in the fight for democracy. To Iran, you have declared that it is unacceptable for this radical regime to realize its publicly stated goal of becoming a nuclear power. While some were praising Yasser Arafat as a model statesman, you understood with great moral clarity the true nature of the man. Your historic I have to turn it over to Bernice. Mr. President, your historic June 24th speech stated that Israel would never negotiate under fire. You told the Palestinians that only when terrorism stops and new Palestinian leadership comes forth can a peaceful plan for a two-state solution move forward. And just a few weeks ago, before a stunning backdrop of American and Israeli flags at the White House, you stood shoulder to shoulder with Prime Minister Sharon. Together you forged a critical new path. Next week, Jews around the world will celebrate the holiday of Shavuos, and in doing so, we will read from the book of Ruth, a biblical story of one individual's courage, conviction, and dedication to a people. Mr. President, for your modern-day commitment to the Jewish people and for your faithful friendship to Israel, we are supremely grateful. My fellow delegates, please welcome the President of the United States.
Thank you all. Thank you all very much. Thank you all. Please be seated. Go ahead. Finally, AIPAC elected a president I could kiss. I'm honored to be here at AIPAC. Thank you for such a warm welcome. It's good to be with so many friends of mine, and friends of Israel. For more than 50 years, the United States and Israel have been steadfast allies. AIPAC is one of the reasons why. You have worked tirelessly. You've worked tirelessly to strengthen the ties that bind our nations, our shared values, our strong commitment to freedom. By defending the freedom and prosperity and security of Israel, you're also serving the cause of America. Our nation is stronger and safer because we have a true and dependable ally in Israel. I appreciate sit down. I'm just getting warmed up. I want to thank Amy for her leadership. I appreciate you taking time to. I appreciate you taking time to serve a cause that in which you believe deeply. I want to thank Bernice for her willingness to serve as well. I've known Howard for a long time. He's effective. I want to thank the AIPAC board members for their friendship and leadership. I'm honored to be in the presence of my friend, the ambassador from Israel, Danny Ayalon. Appreciate you being here, Danny. Ehud Olmert is with us. Ehud, good to see you again. Thank you, sir. I remember the first time we visited in 1998. I had just been re-elected as the governor of Texas. I went to Israel, and Ehud welcomed me and 3 other governors to, I guess, your office. You were the mayor, if I'm not mistaken, at that point in time, and you were focused on filling potholes and emptying the garbage of the people. But we struck up a good relationship then, and it's great to see you again. I appreciate the other ministers who are here, some of whom I have met before, some of whom I have had not the honor of meeting. I know I've met Tommy before. Appreciate you all being here. Welcome to America. Thank you, Tommy. I'd like to also recognize many people this morning who are learning to participate in democracy. I'm told there are over 850 students here from 50 states. Thank you. Just make sure the Texas students behave well. Your mothers are watching. I know there's buses outside waiting to take you to Capitol Hill. I'm told, Howard told me there's over 500 meetings scheduled with members of the Senate and the House. That is good news. I'm sure you're going to pass this message on to them. A free, prosperous, and secure Israel is in this nation's national interests. Thank you all. AIPAC is doing important work. I hope you know that. In Washington and beyond, AIPAC is calling attention to the great security challenges of our time. You're educating Congress and the American people on the growing dangers of proliferation. You've spoken out on the threat posed by Iran's pursuit of nuclear weapons. You've always understood and warned against the evil ambitions of terrorism and their networks. In a dangerous new century, your work is more vital than ever. I thank you for doing your part in the cause of freedom. Our nation and the nation of Israel have much in common. We're both relatively young nations, born of struggle and sacrifice. We're both founded by immigrants escaping religious persecution in other lands. We have both built vibrant democracies, built on the rule of law and market economies. And we're both countries founded on certain basic beliefs: that God watches over the affairs of men and values every life. These ties have made us natural allies, and these ties will never be broken. In the past, however, there was one great difference in the experience of our two nations. The United States, through most of our history, has been protected by vast oceans to our east and west, and blessed with friendly neighbors to our north and south. Israel has faced a different situation as a small country in a tough neighborhood. The Israeli people have always had enemies at their borders and terrorists close at hand. Again and again, Israel has defended itself with skill and heroism. And as a result of their courage of the Israeli people, Israel has earned the respect of the American people. On September the 11th, 2001, Americans saw that we are no longer protected by geography from the dangers of the world. We experienced the horror of being attacked in our homeland, on our streets, and in places of work. And from that experience came an even stronger determination, a fierce determination to defeat terrorism and to eliminate the threat it poses to free people everywhere. Not all terrorist networks answer to the same orders and same leaders, but all terrorists burn with the same hatred. They hate all who reject their grim vision of tyranny. They hate people who love freedom. They kill without mercy. They kill without shame. And they count their victories in the death of the innocent. We saw the nature of this enemy again in recent days when terrorists in Iraq beheaded an American citizen, Nicholas Berg. The message that accompanied the videotape of this brutal slaying promised more such atrocities. Here's what the killer said: "We will send you coffin after coffin, box after box, slaughtered in this way." The faces of the terrorists were cloaked, but we have seen their kind before. Followers of the terrorist ideology executed an elderly man in a wheelchair, Leon Klinghoffer, and pushed his body off the side of a ship into the sea. They kidnapped the journalist Daniel Pearl and cut his throat because he was a Jew. This enemy has left blood on the streets of Jakarta and Jerusalem, Casablanca and Riyadh, Mombasa and Istanbul, Bali, Baghdad, and Madrid. They have declared war on the civilized world. And war is what they got. Freedom-loving people did not seek this conflict. It has come to us by the choices of violent men, hateful men. See, we seek peace. We long for peace. Israel longs for peace. America longs for peace. Yet there can be no peace without defending our security. There is only one path to peace and safety. America will use every resource we have to fight and defeat these enemies of freedom. The lesson of September the 11th is clear and must never be forgotten. Emerging terrorist threats must be confronted before they can reach our country and harm our people. Every terrorist is at war with civilization, and every group or nation that aids them is equally responsible for the murders that the terrorists commit. So America has led a relentless global campaign against terrorists and their supporters. We're chasing them down one by one, in caves and in shadows where they try to hide. We have uncovered terrorist cells on several continents. We've prevented a number of terrorist attacks. We've removed the Taliban regime, which sheltered the plotters of September the 11th. We have stopped shipments of chemical precursors and nuclear-related weapons-related components bound for states that sponsor terror. By speaking clearly and by meaning what we say, countries like Libya have gotten the message and have renounced their weapons programs. And for the sake of peace and security, we ended the regime of Saddam Hussein. That regime cast a shadow, a dark shadow of aggression over the Middle East for decades. They invaded both Iran and Kuwait. The regime built and used weapons of mass destruction against its neighbors and its own people. The regime sponsored terror and paid rewards of up to $25,000 to the families of Palestinian homicide bombers. That regime filled mass graves with innocent men, innocent women, and innocent children. That regime defied the demands of the free world and America for more than a decade. And America is more secure and the world is better off because that regime is no more. America is on the offensive, and we will stay on the offensive until the terrorists are stopped and our people are safe. I will use every asset at our disposal to do our most important job, which is to protect the American people. And that includes the United States military. We have come to know the skill and the courage of the men and women of the United States military. They have fulfilled every mission their country has given to them. They and their families have endured long deployments and uncertainty. Our men and women in uniform have fought in mountain passes and desert sands in the remotest part of the world. They've lost brave friends and comrades who will always be remembered and honored by a grateful nation. They have done all this. They have done all this to defend our country and to advance the cause of freedom and peace. And their loved ones and those who wear our uniform must know that America is very grateful to their service. The peace we seek depends on defeating the violent. Yet we also have a larger mission in the world. In the long term, we must end terrorist violence at its source by undermining the terrorist ideology of hatred and fear. Terrorists find influence and recruits in societies where bitterness and resentment are common, and hope and opportunity are rare. The world's best hope for lasting security and stability across the Middle East is the establishment of just and free societies. And so across that vital region, America is standing for the expansion of human liberty. This historic task is not easy in a part of the world that has known so much oppression and stagnation and violence. It's hard work. Yet we must be strong in our firm belief that every human heart desires to be free. We must be strong in our belief that free societies are hopeful societies and peaceful societies. We have made progress that few would have predicted or expected just 3 years ago. In Afghanistan, our coalition is working with President Karzai to help the people of Afghanistan build a modern, peaceful, and democratic government. In January, Afghans approved a new constitution that protects the right of all Afghan citizens, including women. Through weeks of negotiation and compromise, they agreed upon a fundamental law that respects tradition and establishes a foundation of modern political rights, including free speech, due process, and a vote for every citizen. We're making progress. In Iraq, Saddam's brutal dictatorship is gone, and in its place, an Iraqi democracy is emerging. Iraqi leaders have signed a transitional administrative law that will guarantee basic freedoms. Iraq now has an independent judiciary, a free market, a new currency, more than 200 newspapers in circulation, and schools free of hateful propaganda. It's hard work in Iraq. Our efforts are approaching a crucial moment. On June 30th, our coalition will transfer its authority to a sovereign Iraqi government. With the assistance of the United Nations and our coalition, Iraqi citizens are currently making important decisions about the nature and scope of the interim government. In time, Iraq will be a free and democratic nation at the heart of the Middle East. This will send a message, a powerful message from Damascus to Tehran that democracy can bring hope to lives in every culture. And this advance of freedom will bring greater security to America and to the world. These are historic times. It's an historic opportunity. Yet as June 30th approaches, the enemies of freedom grow even more desperate to prevent the rise of democracy in Iraq. That's what you're seeing on your TV screens. Desperation by a hateful few. People who cannot stand the thought of free societies in their midst. They're targeting brave Iraqis who are leading toward democracy, such as Izz-al-Din Salim, who was assassinated in Baghdad yesterday. They're murdering Iraqi policemen who stand as symbols of order. They're killing foreign aid workers who are helping to rebuild Iraq. They're attacking our military. Their goal is to undermine the will of our coalition and the will of America, and to drive us out before our mission is complete. They're not going to succeed. They will not shake the will of America. My resolve is firm. The resolve of the American people is solid. Our military is skilled. Spirits are high. They are determined to succeed. We understand the stakes are high for America and for the world. We will not be intimidated by thugs and assassins. We will win this essential, important victory in the war on terror. This is an historic moment. The world watches for weakness in our resolve. They will see no weakness. We will answer every challenge. U.S. Army soldiers and Iraqi security forces are systematically destroying the illegal militia in the south of Iraq. Coalition forces are working with Iraqis in Fallujah to end control by Saddam loyalists and foreign fighters. We're building up Iraqi security forces so they can safeguard their own country. We're flexible in our methods, but our goal is unchanging. Iraq will be free, and Iraq will be a democratic nation. Freedom is also at the heart of our approach to bringing peace between Israel and the Palestinian people. The United States is strongly committed, and I am strongly committed to the security of Israel as a vibrant Jewish state. Israel is a democracy and a friend, and has every right to defend itself from terror. For the sake of peace, this country is committed to helping the Palestinian people establish a democratic and viable state of their own. Israel needs a truly responsible partner in achieving peace. The Palestinian people deserve democratic institutions and responsible leaders. Progress toward this vision creates responsibilities for Israel, the Palestinian people, and Arab nations. Before there can be two states, all parties must renounce violence and fight terror. Security is the foundation for peace. All parties must embrace democracy and reform and take the necessary steps for peace. The unfolding violence in the Gaza Strip is troubling and underscores the need for all parties to seize every opportunity for peace. I supported the plan announced by Prime Minister Sharon to withdraw military installations and settlements from Gaza and parts of the West Bank. As I said in my statement on April 14, 2004, the Prime Minister's plan is a bold, courageous step that can bring us closer to the goal of two states, Israel and Palestine, living side by side in peace and security. The Prime Minister's decision has given the Palestinian people and the free world a chance to take bold steps of their own toward peace. First, the Palestinian people must reject corrupt and failed leaders and insist on a leadership committed to reform and progress and peace. Second, they must renounce terror and violence that frustrate their aspirations and take so many innocent lives. And finally, by taking these steps, they will have an opportunity, a fantastic opportunity, to build a modern economy and create the institutions and habits of liberty. The Palestinian people deserve a better future, and that future can be achieved through democracy. Many in this room have worked and waited a lifetime for peace in the Holy Land. I hear that deep concern for peace. Our vision is a Middle East where young Israelis and Palestinians can play and learn and grow without living in the shadow of death. Our vision is a Middle East where borders are crossed for purposes of trade and commerce, not crossed for the purposes of murder and war. This vision is within our grasp if we have the faith and the courage and the resolve to achieve it. Perhaps the deepest obstacle to peace is found in the hearts of men and women. The Jewish people have seen over the years and over the centuries that hate prepares the way for violence. The refusal to expose and confront intolerance can lead to crimes beyond imagining. So we have a duty to expose and confront anti-Semitism wherever it is found. Some of you attended a very important event in Berlin last month, the International Conference on Anti-Semitism. You understand that anti-Semitism is not a problem of the past, and hatred of Jews did not die in a Berlin bunker. In its cruder forms, it can be found in some Arab media, and its government will continue to call upon Arab governments to end libels and incitements. Such hatred can also take subtler forms. The demonization of Israel, the most extreme anti-Zionist rhetoric, can be a flimsy cover for anti-Semitism and contribute to an atmosphere of fear in which synagogues are desecrated, people are slandered, folks are threatened. I will continue to call upon our friends in Europe to renounce and fight any sign of anti-Semitism in their midst. We are living through historic times. We are called to do important work in the world. We will stand together against bigotry in every land and every language. We will answer violent men with patient, determined justice. We will expand human freedom and the peace that freedom brings. And by our resolve and by our courage, we will prevail. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your dedication to the security of America and to the safety of Israel. I want to thank you for your warm hospitality today. May God bless America. May God bless Israel. Thank you for coming. Thank you all for your time. Thank you all.
President live this morning in Washington. Now
Ladies
look at
and
some of our
gentlemen,
programming this
please
morning on the C-SPAN networks.
until the president has left the building. Thank you. I have a few
More questioning today on the situation